You're standing in a kitchen that isn't even yours, someone else's party, someone else's drink in your hand. And across the room, there's a person who just walked in. And within 90 seconds, the whole room has quietly rearranged itself around them. Nobody announced it. Nobody asked for it. It just happened. Heads turned a little. Conversations got a little more alive. And you stood there thinking the same thought you've probably thought 100 times before. What do they have that I don't? Is it the way they talk? The way they look? Some kind of secret? Why does it seem so effortless for them and so exhausting for me? Wait, here's the part almost nobody says out loud. Charisma was never about being the loudest person in the room. It was never about looks, status, or some rare gene you were either born with or weren't. Charisma is a skill built entirely on how safe, how seen, and how alive you make other people feel in your presence. And that can be learned. You are not broken. You are not a people person. Every magnetic person you've ever envied was, at some point, exactly where you are right now. Awkward, overthinking, replaying conversations at 2 a.m., wondering why connection felt so hard. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what separates a forgettable presence from a magnetic one, piece by piece, and more importantly, you'll know which pieces you're already missing without even realizing it. Let's get into it. Most people believe charisma is something you perform, a version of yourself you switch on, bigger voice, bigger smile, bigger stories. But the real truth is, charisma isn't performance at all, it's presence. It's the ability to make someone feel like, for the 60 seconds you're talking to them, they are the only person in the room that matters. Your nervous system is reading a room before your mind even catches up, and so is everyone else's. People don't consciously decide who they like. Their body decides first. A held breath, a softened shoulder, a lean forward, a lean away, and then their mind invents a reason afterward. That's the secret almost nobody talks about. Charisma doesn't happen in the words. It happens in the nervous system, underneath the words, before a single sentence is even spoken. This is why trying harder often makes people less magnetic, not more. More jokes, more energy, more talking. And somehow, the room pulls away instead of leaning in. Because charisma was never about output, it was about attunement. The ability to read a moment and match it instead of override it. And once you understand this, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In every conversation, every first impression, every room you walk into. Here's where it shows up first. Here's the part no one talks about. The first thing that separates magnetic people from everyone else is what happens in the first 3 seconds of eye contact. Most people, when they meet someone new, glance and look away. A flicker of contact, then a retreat, to their drink, their phone, the floor, anywhere but the other person's eyes. It feels safer. It feels less exposed. But here's what nobody explains. That flicker isn't politeness. It's a subtle signal of discomfort, and the other person's nervous system picks it up instantly, even if their conscious mind never names it. Picture two versions of the exact same handshake. In the first, someone meets your eyes for half a second, says nice to meet you, and their gaze is already sliding toward the door behind you. In the second, someone meets your eyes, holds for just a beat longer than expected, and says the exact same words, but this time their eyes stay, warm, unhurried, like they've got nowhere else to be. Something in the other person quietly registers, this person actually wants to be here with me. That's it. That's the whole shift, not longer eye contact out of intensity, longer eye contact out of ease. And when you do that, people start feeling like your attention is a gift instead of an obligation, which means the moment you look at them, something in them settles. And once your eyes learn to stay, your voice is the next thing that has to catch up. This is where it gets really interesting. The second shift is learning to slow down, especially in the exact moments your body wants to speed up. Most people, when they get nervous or excited, start talking faster. Words tumble out. Sentences run into each other. It feels like enthusiasm from the inside. But from the outside, it often reads as anxiety. And here's what changes everything. Slowness isn't boring. Slowness is confidence, translated into rhythm. A person who pauses before answering isn't unsure of themselves. They're showing you, without saying a word, that they trust the room to wait for them. Picture someone getting asked a hard question at a dinner table. Version 1 rushes to fill the silence. I guess, probably. Words stacking on top of each other, eyes darting. Version 2 takes a breath. Lets a beat of silence sit in the air. Then answers, slower, quieter, more deliberate, and somehow the whole table leans in to hear it. Nobody's brain consciously thinks that pause was powerful. But somewhere underneath, a thought forms, this person isn't afraid of silence, so maybe I don't need to be either. That's when a conversation stops feeling like two people racing to be heard and starts feeling like two people actually listening. And once your words slow down, the next shift is about where your attention goes when someone else is talking. Here's the part almost nobody figures out. The most magnetic people in any room are almost never the best talkers. They're the best listeners, while someone else is speaking, are quietly composing their next sentence, waiting for a gap. Half listening, half rehearsing. It's not malicious, it's just what an anxious mind does when it's scared of an awkward silence. But here's the deeper truth. Real listening isn't about staying quiet. It's about staying curious. It's the difference between waiting for your turn and actually wanting to know what happens next in someone else's sentence. Picture two people hearing the exact same story about someone's rough week at work. Version 1 nods along, already thinking about a similar story of their own to share next. Version 2 leans forward slightly, asks one small follow-up question. Wait, what did you say back to them? And actually waits for the answer. Something in the storyteller quietly thinks, they actually care what happens to me. That reaction, that felt sense of being followed, not just heard, is worth more than any joke, any charm, any clever line you could have said instead. People don't remember what you said nearly as often as they remember how curious you made them feel about themselves. And once you become someone who listens like that, the next shift is about how you make people feel about their own value. Here's where it gets really interesting. Magnetic people have a strange habit. They make other people feel impressive, not the other way around. Most people walk into a room quietly trying to prove something. Their intelligence, their success, their humor, some version of notice how good I am. It's not arrogance most of the time. It's just fear wearing a confident outfit. But here's what changes everything. The moment you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to notice what's impressive in someone else, the entire dynamic of the room flips. Picture a conversation at a work event. Version 1 spends 5 minutes explaining their own recent accomplishment in careful detail, watching the other person's face for approval. Version 2 asks one specific question about the other person's work, something that shows they were actually paying attention, and watches that person light up while explaining it. Not louder self-promotion, not more impressive stories, not a better resume recited out loud, but one person genuinely curious about another person's world for no reason except that it's interesting. Something in that other person thinks, quietly, I feel smart around this person. And that feeling is what people chase for the rest of their lives without ever naming it. That's when you stop being remembered as someone who talked a lot and start being remembered as someone who made a room feel better just by being in it. And once people feel good around you, the next layer is about how you handle the moments that go wrong. Here's the part no one talks about. Magnetic people aren't magnetic because they never mess up. They're magnetic because of what they do the second after they mess up. Most people, the moment they say something awkward or fumble a sentence, freeze. Their face flushes. Their energy drops. They apologize 3 times, over-explain, and the whole room feels the discomfort with them. But here's the deeper truth. A mistake isn't what breaks connection. Panic about the mistake is what breaks connection. Picture someone tripping slightly over their own words mid-sentence in a group conversation. Version 1 stops, blushes, says sorry, I don't know what I'm saying, and shrinks for the rest of the night. Version 2 laughs at themselves, says something like, well, that sentence had a rough landing, and keeps going without missing a beat. Something in the room exhales along with them. Oh, it's okay to not be perfect here. That's the real secret. Ease is contagious. When you stay relaxed after a stumble, you give everyone around you permission to stop performing too. And that permission, that's the exact thing that turns a stiff room into a warm one. And once you can survive your own awkward moments without flinching, the next shift is about how you make people feel remembered. This is where it gets really interesting. Magnetic people remember things about you that you didn't expect anyone to remember. Most people forget details within minutes of a conversation ending. Names, small stories, offhand comments, gone by the time they leave the room. Not from carelessness, just from being distracted, half present, thinking about 10 other things. But here's what changes everything. When someone remembers a small detail about you, your sister's name, the trip you mentioned once, the thing you said you were nervous about, it tells your nervous system something enormous. It tells you that you mattered enough to be held onto. Picture running into someone weeks after a first conversation. Version 1 says, hey, good to see you again, and nothing more. Version 2 says, hey, did that interview you were stressing about ever happen? And suddenly the whole interaction has weight to it. Something in that person thinks, almost involuntarily, they actually remembered me. That's identity-level charisma, not technique-level charisma. This isn't a trick for seeming attentive. It's what it looks like when someone has actually decided other people are worth paying attention to. And once people feel remembered by you, the final shift is the one that ties everything else together. Here's the last part, and it's the one that changes everything before it. Magnetic people are comfortable taking up space, but they're just as comfortable making space for someone else to take up too. Most people default to one extreme or the other, either shrinking, apologizing for existing, deflecting every compliment, disappearing into the corner of every room, or overcorrecting, dominating, talking over people, needing to be the center of every conversation to feel like they matter. But here's the deeper truth underneath both of those patterns. They're the same fear wearing two different costumes. One person is afraid they're too much. The other is afraid they're not enough. And real charisma lives in the calm middle. The quiet confidence that you don't need to shrink and you don't need to perform because you already belong in the room exactly as you are. Picture a group conversation. Version 1 sits quietly at the edge, waiting to be invited in, laughing a beat late at every joke. Version 2 sits comfortably, speaks when they have something worth saying, and just as easily turns to someone quieter and says, "Wait, I want to hear what you think," not to be polite, because they actually mean it. Something shifts in that quieter person, a small, internal exhale. I have room here too. That's the whole thing. Charisma was always pointing toward, not being the brightest light in the room, being the person who makes the whole room feel a little more lit up, including the people who were standing in the corner. And when you do that, the walls between you and every stranger in every room start to come down without either of you having to say a word. So picture that kitchen again, the party that wasn't yours. The person who walked in and changed the temperature of the room without trying. Except this time, it's you standing in that doorway. Same room. Same strangers. Same nerves fluttering somewhere underneath your ribs. But something underneath all of it has quietly changed. This was never a checklist of tricks to memorize before your next social event. It was an invitation to become someone who makes people feel safe, seen, and a little more alive just by being near you. And that changes everything about what's possible in every room you'll ever walk into. Charisma was never about being the most impressive person in the room. It was about being the person who makes everyone else feel like the most interesting person in it. If one of these hit closer to home than you expected, that's worth sitting with for a second. And if you want to know exactly what to say the moment a conversation goes quiet and you don't know how to fill it, that's the video I made right after this one. Wherever you're standing right now, awkward, unsure, still figuring it out, you're closer to that version of yourself than you think. And that is a pretty good place to start.